What's up, guys? It's Gary with Fresh from the Farm Fungi. It's about 2 weeks since we isolated our ascospores and put them on plates, and today is the day that we are going to be mating those different types. So essentially I'm just going to be taking those isolated colonies and transferring them one at a time, pairing each other on one single plate. And the idea is that the two separate genetics will fuse together to form one diploid mycelium, and that is what we'll use from here on out in the process to produce fruiting bodies. So there's 3 different mating types for cordyceps, and 2 of them pair with each other. So the chances of us getting a solid mating type out of 12 or 15 different isolates is pretty high. There are technologies out there utilizing PCR and electrophoresis, which essentially you would just be splicing the DNA and amplifying it, and then using an electrical current to figure out the mating type. And this would save some time and plates, but it also costs a lot of money up front. So I have a video that I've done on this process if you want to check out our work. Mile High Mycology was kind enough to show us their process, and we worked through the procedures. So if you want to take a look at that video, right now is the time in the process where that would be applicable. But we're just gonna continue to do the down and dirty method of just crossing them physically. And I also wanted to take the spore prints from the cordyceps and inoculate it into a sterile broth, which is just honey and water, and see if we can get some strains that will germinate inside of a liquid that way. And then we've also got our streak plate isolates that I wanted to go through. I took some film of about a week ago or Monday just to show you the different colonies separating, and I had the idea of just letting those kind of grow out and fuse together, and maybe you can cut out a step doing that. It's a little bit more random. You don't get to keep the individual isolate separate, but it might be a way to save time. And if people don't have access to 20 or 30 petri dishes, it could be an alternative method with pretty good results. So I'll go down to the lab and go through all those isolates and the procedure that I use to bring them together so that they'll be mating. All right guys, so I'm down here in my lab, and I've got a few different processes lined up. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is using a spore print from one of the cordyceps. You can see it right here pretty well. So this essentially is a sterile spore print that I'm going to be aspirating some water. So I sterilize this water here, and then I'm going to use this sterile syringe to pull up about 1 ml worth of concentrated spore solution, and then inoculating into this sterilized honey broth. And the idea is that as the stir bar mixes all the spores, they'll germinate and fuse with one another, and then the strongest mycelium will outcompete the rest of them. And then over here I've got all my plates ready, and some of the isolates that are looking the healthiest from the single ascospores. And then I've also got my isolation plates. So you can see here the one that was inhibited by the bacteria, it actually did show some isolates. I'm not going to mess with those just because I don't really feel like dealing with contamination, but I just wanted to show you that even 2.5 weeks later you can still get your spores germinating through the bacteria, which is kind of remarkable. If there was any really good isolates like over here, I might work with one of those, but it's pretty concentrated, and you can see all the bacteria that's kind of surrounding those colonies. So I'm going to stay away from that one.
But then I have this plate over here, which you can see I took a few isolates from. This was the water isolate streak, and it kind of caught my eye that some of these colonies were starting to overlap. So my thought was that in some of these denser regions, I could just take one of those colonies that have been like fused together and grow it out on a separate plate and see if I would have a successful fruiting strain that way. So, you know, it looked really clean, and it just took a while for these to grow out compared to the water auger onto MEA. But I got a couple clean isolates and they're looking really healthy. So I'm going to try to skip this step by using the streaked out colonies that have kind of fused. And you can see there's some of them that are, you know, forming these lines of differentiation between the colonies, and you don't want to take those because that right there shows that they're not a good mating type. So either they're already fused or, you know, they're not compatible with each other. So I'll flip this around and kind of go through my multi-spore process, and then I'll select some of these isolates, and then I'll go through and mate all of these together, and then hopefully in the next few weeks we'll get some healthy looking fruiting bodies. Okay guys, so I just wanted to show you the spore print that I'm going to be working with. So you can see right in this region there's a lot of spores that dropped. Here's some more for backup. You can see the cordyceps kind of dried out, and then it just leaves almost a silhouette of where the fruiting body was. But I have my sterile water here, which is just tap water that's been sterilized at 250 and 15 psi, and then I've got my sterile honey water. So I like to leave these out for a few days just to make sure that there's no bacterial growth or like cloudiness to it. You can see it's nice and clear. So this is going to be a really nice way to see if we can create a multi-spore liquid culture using Cordyceps ascospores. Just going to open up this spore print. And if you're ever wondering what to do with, you know, any defective plates, or sometimes I get cracked plates in my sleeves, so I'll take like a nice bottom that has a cracked lid, and then maybe if I find a cracked bottom with a nice lid, I'll just seal those up and use them to make spore prints. Or if you don't care about the sterility, you can use old plates. I find that this is a really convenient way to store spore prints for using them like this. So I'll open up my sterile syringe, and then I'm gonna get a few cc's of water here. And I'm just gonna try to collect all the spores on this plate. Now I thought about scraping them off into the liquid culture, but that could be a vector for contamination. So I'm just going to be grabbing some spores right off the dish, and then I'm going to use a sterile syringe and inject it into liquid culture to minimize any sort of contamination risk. So if you haven't seen my video on how I make these lids, I really like the stainless steel ones because they're all one piece, so they're really easy to clean, and these ports will last a while. So you can see I've injected the spores, and now we wait. So I'll just throw this over on the stir plate and let that incubate until I start to see some growth. Alright, so now I can move on to the next process, which I'm going to try to select some of these colonies that have fused together. Like, see right here, this is a really nice one because you can see where the two separate colonies were, and they kind of joined forces right in the middle. So I'm going to take that one right there, and that looks like the best example. So I'm going to maybe do that one and possibly like one from this region over here. And then I'll just call those the streak plate mated pairs. So you can see how they fuse together right here. So in theory, they had already mated on the same plate. I'm gonna go ahead and try to grab this guy too. Alright, so I've got what I assume are mated types here. So we've got mated types at week 2. We've got some spores spinning in the liquid culture, and hopefully by the time we have these mated isolates, that we can introduce these into liquid culture, and then we'll do a bunch of liquid culture inoculations from that point on. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different mating types. So if you've watched my other breeding video, I go through the different permutations. So essentially we're going to mate this single ascospore with all these. So we're going to need about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 plates. And then the next isolate, we're going to need 7 plates. And then we're going to need 6 plates. And then we're going to need 5 plates. And then 4 plates, and so on. But I'll just demonstrate mating this C2 isolate with all of these, just for time's sake. So essentially, I like to just use clean blades for every isolate. just in case you're getting any carryover from the mycelium. So I'll go ahead and pull out a fresh blade here. And there are ways that you can sterilize using a flame syringe or a bacteria incinerator, which is just a little ceramic tool. I've also heard of people using like tattoo artist sterilizers, but those don't get up to $250, so I don't recommend using those. I just prefer to use fresh blades every time until I can afford one of the bacteria incinerators. Those are really convenient, and I've used them in tissue culture in the past. You just need to replace the glass beads every once in a while. But so these are all looking fairly healthy. I'm just trying to keep my eye out for any bacteria or yeast that might be on the auger. Like, see this one here? I'm not going to use that. Probably got some condensation that dripped down and got in the way, so that's going to save me a plate. Alright, so I've got my C2 isolate, and I'm going to first just put one square of this C2 on all these plates. And you always want to work from the edge of the colony, because if there's any bacteria that got overgrown, it's not going to be at the edge. But I've been observing these every day and removing any of them with contamination. So these are super clean colonies. Alright, so these are going to be my C2s. And then I'm going to be moving on to my C11s next. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is move one of my C11s over to my C2, and then I'll just label this C11, C2. Now, there's no rhyme or reason why I called them C2, C11. It's just cordyceps number 2 and cordyceps number 11. So you can see that now we have two separate single ascospore isolates on one plate. And now that these are all C2s, I'm just going to label those real quick before it gets too messy. And I've got my C2s over here, and then this is my mated pairing. So now I can go through the rest of my C11s, and since I already have a C2, I can just go right down this stack of plates here. Alright, and then I can go ahead and just label these C11s so I don't forget. And then I've got my C2s and my C11. So I'll put these ones off to the side. And now I'm going to be moving on to C7. This one looks really healthy. It's got a nice dense cottony morphology to it. Just grab a fresh blade here. And now I'll go through my C7s. So I got my C7, C11. My C7, C2. And then I'll do the rest of my C7s as soon as I label these. I'll go ahead and label these C7. So now I've got my C7, C11, C2, and I'll be moving on to C9. Just so you guys can see my workflow here, I'm going to go ahead and finish up the rest of these and check in once they start to mate. Alright guys, give us a thumbs up if you like this video. Subscribe if you're looking forward to more content like this. I'll keep you guys posted on the updates, and I'm going to go through and finish up the rest of these plates. You can see how tedious this method is, but it's the tried and true method, you know, physical mating. And then we're gonna try, you know, some of these experiments. So I'll keep you updated on all of that, and hopefully we'll get some fruiting bodies in the next couple weeks. All right, until next time, much love.